The stagecoach rattled to a stop outside the Silver Bell Saloon in Black Hawk, Colorado, and Penelope Jensen stepped down onto the dusty street with her worn carpet bag clutched in trembling hands, wondering if the man who had sent for her would even recognize the hollow-eyed woman she had become after traveling 2,000 miles from Boston with nothing but a letter of promise and a voice she no longer believed in. It was late September in 1878, and the mountain town sat nestled in the Rocky Mountain foothills, where fortune seekers still panned for gold in Clear Creek, and outlaws still made their presence known on Saturday nights. Penelope smoothed down her travel-stained gray dress and looked around at the rough wooden buildings that lined the main street, trying not to let disappointment show on her face. Black Hawk was smaller than she had imagined, rougher too, with mud-caked streets and men who stared at her with undisguised curiosity as they passed by. She had exchanged 3 letters with Samuel Morton, a merchant who claimed to need a wife to help run his general store and bring some civilization to his life. His letters had been polite and proper, promising her a comfortable home and respectful treatment. Now she stood on the boardwalk, searching the faces of passing men for someone who might be waiting for a mail-order bride. "Miss Jensen," a reedy voice called out, and Penelope turned to see a thin man in his 50s approaching with quick, nervous steps. He had sparse gray hair and watery blue eyes that would not quite meet hers. "I am Samuel Morton. Welcome to Black Hawk." Her heart sank a little. In his letters, he had mentioned being 42, and while she had not expected a handsome prince, the man before her looked older and more worn than she had anticipated. But she had come too far to turn back now, and Boston held nothing for her anymore except memories of her father's debts and the auction that had scattered their possessions to the winds. "Mr. Morton." She extended her gloved hand, and he shook it briefly before pulling away. "Thank you for your letters. I hope the journey was not too costly. The expense was necessary." His voice was clipped. "I trust you are in good health. Can you cook and sew as you claimed?" "Yes, sir. My mother taught me well before she passed." "Good, good." He picked up her bag without ceremony. "The Reverend is expecting us at 4 o'clock. That gives us an hour. I will show you the store and the living quarters above it. I expect you will find everything satisfactory." As they walked down the street, Penelope felt the weight of curious stares following them. Samuel walked quickly, barely glancing at her, and she had to hurry to keep pace. The general store was a sturdy 2-story building with large windows displaying various goods. Inside, the shelves were well stocked but dusty, and the floor needed sweeping. "The living quarters are upstairs," Samuel said, already climbing the narrow staircase at the back of the store. The rooms above were sparse and practical, with plain furniture and none of the warmth that made a house a home. A small bedroom, a sitting area, and a kitchen that shared the same space as the eating table. "It is very clean," Penelope offered, though her voice felt hollow. "I keep things orderly." Samuel finally looked at her directly, and she saw something hard in his eyes that had not been evident in his carefully worded letters. "I will be plain with you, Miss Jensen. I need a wife who will work hard, keep house properly, and not cause trouble. In return, you will have security and a roof over your head. I am not a romantic man, but I am fair. Do we understand each other?" Penelope swallowed hard. "I understand, Mr. Morton. I will do my best to be a good wife." "See that you do. Now we should go to the church." The wedding ceremony was brief and businesslike, performed by a tired-looking reverend in a small church that smelled of pine and candle wax. 2 witnesses were pulled in from the street, and within 15 minutes, Penelope Jensen had become Penelope Morton. There was no kiss, no celebration, Only Samuel's curt nod before they walked back to the store in silence as the afternoon sun cast long shadows across the mountain town. That evening, Samuel showed her the account books and explained her duties. She would manage the store while he traveled to Denver once a month for supplies. She would keep the living quarters clean, cook his meals, and mend his clothes. He spoke of their arrangement as though discussing a business contract, which Penelope supposed it was. When night fell and Samuel retired to the bedroom, Penelope stood by the window in the sitting area, looking out at the lamplit street below. She could hear piano music drifting from the Silver Bell Saloon down the street, and the sound made her heart ache with longing. Singing had once been her greatest joy, the one thing that made her feel alive and free. Her mother had possessed a beautiful voice, and Penelope had inherited that gift, performing at church socials and private gatherings in Boston, until her father's gambling debts had brought shame upon their family and silenced her songs. "Are you coming to bed?" Samuel's voice called from the bedroom, devoid of warmth or invitation. "Yes, in a moment." She pressed her hand against the cool glass, feeling trapped and lost in this strange new life. But she had made her choice, and there was no going back. The days that followed settled into a monotonous routine. Penelope rose early to prepare breakfast, opened the store at 7, and spent her days measuring out flour and sugar, cutting fabric, and making polite conversation with the miners and their families who came to trade. Samuel was not unkind, but he was cold and distant, treating her more like a hired servant than a wife. At night, she lay beside him in the darkness, feeling more alone than she had ever felt in her life. 3 weeks after her arrival, Samuel left for Denver on his monthly supply run. "I will be gone 4 days," he told her as he hitched the wagon. "Keep the store running smoothly. Do not let anyone take advantage of you on credit, and stay out of the saloons. I will not have my wife consorting with those people." "Yes, Samuel." She stood on the boardwalk and watched him drive away, then returned to the store with a mixture of relief and loneliness. That evening, after she had locked up the store and eaten a solitary dinner, Penelope could no longer resist the pull of the music coming from the Silver Bell. She had obeyed Samuel's directive to stay away, but now that he was gone, the loneliness pressed down on her like a physical weight. She just wanted to hear music, to be around people who were laughing and alive. Surely there was no harm in just listening from the doorway. She walked down the street as the September night turned cool, wrapping her shawl around her shoulders. The Silver Bell was bright and noisy, with yellow light spilling from its windows and doors. Penelope stood just outside, peering in at the crowd of miners and cowboys gathered around tables, drinking and gambling while a man played energetic melodies on an upright piano. "Evening, madam." A deep voice spoke near her shoulder, and Penelope jumped, turning to find a tall cowboy standing beside her. He touched the brim of his hat politely, and even in the dim light, she could see that he was younger than most of the men in town, perhaps in his late 20s, with dark hair that curled slightly at his collar and eyes that seemed to notice everything. "You look like you are wanting to go in but are not quite sure about it." "I was just listening to the music," Penelope said, taking a step back. "I should return home." "The music is better inside," the cowboy said with an easy smile, "and it is safe enough if you are worried about that. Big Tom, who owns the place, does not allow roughhousing when ladies are present. Not that we get many ladies in the Silver Bell, but still. My husband would not approve." "Is your husband that fellow who owns the general store, Morton?" When Penelope nodded, the cowboy's expression shifted slightly, something like sympathy crossing his features. "I have done business with him. He is a hard man. All the more reason you deserve a bit of music and company, seems to me. Name is Cade Lawson, by the way." I work at the Carpenter Ranch about 5 miles north of town. Penelope Morton. She should walk away, she knew, but the warmth and life spilling from the saloon called to something deep in her soul that had been locked away for too long. Tell you what, Miss Penelope. You come inside, sit at a respectable table near the back, and I will make sure nobody bothers you. You can listen to the music for a bit, and then I will walk you safely back home. No harm done, and your husband need never know you broke his rules for one evening. It was foolish and reckless, but Penelope found herself nodding. Cade Lawson offered his arm and she took it, letting him guide her into the Silver Bell Saloon. The interior was hazy with tobacco smoke and smelled of whiskey and sawdust. Men turned to stare as Cade led her to a corner table, but his presence seemed to command respect, and no one called out or made crude remarks. He pulled out a chair for her, then signaled to the bartender. "Bring the lady a sarsaparilla and me a beer," Cade called out, settling into the chair across from her. "So, Miss Penelope, what brings a refined lady like yourself to rough country like Black Hawk?" "The same thing that brings most women. Hope for a better life." She looked around the saloon, taking in the paintings of dancing girls on the walls and the elaborate bar with its brass footrail. "Though I am beginning to think hope is a luxury I cannot afford." "That is a sad thing to hear." Cade accepted his beer from the bartender and watched as Penelope sipped her sarsaparilla. "You have not been here long, have you? I would have remembered seeing you. 3 weeks. I came as a mail-order bride. And how are you finding married life in the mountains?" Penelope looked at him sharply, but his expression showed only genuine interest, no mockery or prying curiosity. There was something about Cade Lawson that invited honesty, a steadiness in his gaze that suggested he could be trusted with the truth. "Lonely," she admitted quietly. "My husband is a good provider, but he is not a warm man. I suppose I should be grateful. Many women have far worse." "Gratitude and happiness are not the same thing." Cade leaned back in his chair, and Penelope found herself studying him more closely. He had strong features and sun-browned skin, with calloused hands that spoke of hard work. But there was intelligence in his eyes and a gentleness in his manner that surprised her. Cowboys were supposed to be rough and wild, but this man seemed different. The piano player finished his song and the saloon erupted in applause and calls for more. But the pianist stood up, shaking his head. "That is all for me tonight, boys. My fingers are worn out. Come on, Freddie, just one more." Someone shouted, but the pianist was already heading toward the bar. "Anyone else here play?" Big Tom called out from behind the bar, a massive man with a barrel chest and a booming voice. "We cannot have a Saturday night without music." Several men called out suggestions, but no one stepped forward. The energy in the room began to deflate, and Penelope felt a pang of disappointment. She had come for the music after all. "What about singing?" Cade said suddenly, looking at Penelope with a slight smile. "You look like someone who might have a voice." "Oh no," she shook her head quickly. "I could not." "Why not? You afraid of this rough crowd?" "It is not that. I have not sung in over a year, not since." She trailed off, not wanting to explain about the shame and scandal that had silenced her in Boston. "Sometimes the thing we have not done in a long while is exactly the thing we need to do," Cade said gently. "And something tells me you have a story to tell through song. Am I right?" Penelope looked around the saloon at the disappointed faces of men who worked hard and dangerous jobs in the mines and ranches, men who deserved a bit of beauty and joy in their difficult lives. She thought about her loveless marriage and the long, silent days in the general store. She thought about her mother, who had always said that singing was a gift meant to be shared, not hoarded. "I suppose I could try one song," she heard herself say, and Cade's face lit up with approval. He stood and offered his hand to help her up. "Big Tom, we have got a volunteer," he called out, and the saloon erupted in cheers and whistles. Penelope's heart pounded as Cade led her to the small, cleared space near the piano. She had performed before, but never in a place like this, never for an audience of rough miners and cowboys. Her hands trembled as she smoothed down her skirt and tried to remember the words to songs she had once known by heart. "What will you sing?" Cade asked, standing beside her as though ready to offer support if she needed it. "Lorna," she said, choosing a popular ballad that had been sung during the war years, a sad and beautiful song about lost love and longing. It seemed fitting for how she felt in this moment. The saloon had grown quiet, dozens of eyes watching her with curiosity and anticipation. Penelope closed her eyes, took a deep breath, and began to sing. The first notes came out soft and uncertain, but as she continued, her voice grew stronger and clearer. It had been so long since she had allowed herself to truly sing, and the sensation was like coming home after a long journey. Her voice filled the saloon, pure and achingly beautiful, carrying all the loneliness and hope and sorrow she had kept locked inside. "The years creep slowly by, Lorna. The snow is on the grass again. The sun's low down the sky, Lorna. The frost gleams where the flowers have been." She opened her eyes and saw that every man in the saloon had gone completely still. Some had removed their hats, holding them over their hearts. Others stared at her with expressions of wonder and pain, as though her voice had reached into their chests and touched something long forgotten. Even Big Tom stood motionless behind the bar, a glass frozen in his hand, but it was Cade's face that held her attention. He stood just a few feet away, and the look in his eyes made her breath catch. He was watching her as though she were something miraculous, something precious and rare. No one had ever looked at her like that before, not even in her life before the scandal, and certainly not Samuel. She finished the song, the last note hanging in the air like a prayer, and for a long moment, the Silver Bell Saloon remained in absolute silence. Then the room erupted. Men jumped to their feet, shouting and applauding, some with tears streaming down their weathered faces. They surged toward her, and Penelope took an instinctive step back, suddenly frightened by the intensity of their reaction. But Cade was there immediately, positioning himself between her and the crowd. "Give the lady some space, boys. Show your appreciation like gentlemen." The men backed off slightly, still clapping and calling out thanks. Big Tom made his way through the crowd, his broad face split in a huge grin. "Miss, that was the most beautiful thing I have heard in 20 years of running this establishment. You have got a gift from the angels themselves." "Thank you," Penelope managed, overwhelmed by the response. "I did not expect such kindness. Will you sing another?" Someone called out, and the crowd took up the request, pleading for more. Penelope looked at Cade, and he gave her an encouraging nod. "Only if you want to, but they would surely love to hear more." She sang 4 more songs that night. Each one met with the same reverent silence and thunderous applause. She sang Shenandoah and Beautiful Dreamer and Ora Lee. And with each song, she felt pieces of herself coming back together, the parts that Samuel's coldness and her father's failures had tried to break. When she finally begged off, pleading exhaustion, the men thanked her with such genuine warmth that she felt tears pricking her eyes. Cade kept his word, escorting her through the crowd and out into the cool night air. They walked slowly back toward the general store, neither speaking for a while, just letting the night sounds of Black Hawk fill the space between them. "You have an extraordinary gift," Cade finally said as they neared the store. "I have never heard anything like it." "Why did you stop singing for so long?" Penelope hesitated, then decided she owed him honesty after his kindness. My father accumulated gambling debts in Boston. When he died, the creditors came for everything we had. There was a scandal, and polite society turned its back on us. I was no longer welcome at the gatherings where I used to perform. My mother's illness took what little money I could earn with sewing, and after she passed, I had nothing left. So I answered Samuel's advertisement. "I am sorry you went through that." They had reached the store, and Cade stopped at the bottom of the outside stairs that led to the living quarters. "But I am glad you found your voice again tonight. The men in that saloon will be talking about this evening for years to come. Thank you for encouraging me. And for protecting me from the crowd." She smiled at him, a real smile that felt strange on her face after so many weeks of forced pleasantness. "You are a good man, Cade Lawson. I try to be." He touched his hat brim. "Will you sing again? At the saloon, I mean, they will ask for you." "I do not think my husband would approve." "He does not have to know. He is gone several days each month, is he not? You could sing those nights just for an hour or two. It seems a shame to hide such a gift." Penelope knew she should refuse, should draw a line now before this became complicated. But standing there in the moonlight with Cade looking at her with such warmth and understanding, she found she did not want to refuse. She did not want to return to the silent, lonely existence that awaited her upstairs. "Perhaps I will come back next Saturday, if Samuel is traveling again." Cade's smile made something flutter in her chest. "I will look forward to it. Good night, Miss Penelope." "Good night, Cade." She climbed the stairs and let herself into the dark apartment, her heart still racing from the evening's events. She had felt alive for the first time in so long, and she knew it was not just the singing that had awakened something in her. It was the way Cade had looked at her, the way he had listened to her story without judgment, the way his presence had made her feel seen and valued. It was dangerous, she knew. She was a married woman, and these feelings had no place in her life. But as she lay in bed that night, she could not stop replaying the evening in her mind, could not stop remembering the warmth in Cade's eyes or the way her voice had soared free in that smoky saloon. Samuel returned 3 days later, and Penelope said nothing about her visit to the Silver Bell. He asked no questions about how she had spent her time, seeming to assume she had simply minded the store and kept house as instructed. Life returned to its routine of measured exchanges and separate existences. But the following Saturday, when Samuel mentioned he would be traveling to Denver again the next week, Penelope felt her pulse quicken with anticipation. She kept her expression neutral, nodding as he listed his expectations for her behavior during his absence. But inside, she was already planning her return to the saloon. The week dragged by with agonizing slowness. On Saturday evening, after Samuel had left that morning and she had closed the store, Penelope took more care with her appearance than she had in weeks. She brushed her honey-brown hair until it shone and pinned it up in a softer style. She changed into her best dress, a dark blue cotton that brought out the color of her eyes. She told herself she was not doing this for Cade, that she simply wanted to look presentable for her performance, but her racing heart knew the truth. The Silver Bell was crowded when she arrived, and a cheer went up as soon as she stepped through the door. Men waved and called out greetings, and Big Tom hurried over to welcome her personally. "Miss Penelope, we have been hoping you would return. The fellows have been talking about your singing all week. Some even claimed I was exaggerating how good you were, but I told them they would have to hear for themselves." "I cannot stay long," Penelope said, though she was smiling at the warm welcome. "Just a few songs. However many you are willing to share, we are grateful." Big Tom led her toward the cleared space by the piano, and that was when she saw Cade. He was sitting at a table with 3 other cowboys, but he stood as soon as he spotted her. Their eyes met across the crowded room, and Penelope felt that strange flutter again, stronger this time. He made his way through the crowd to her side. "You came back," he said simply, and the pleasure in his voice was unmistakable. "I told you I might. I am glad you did." He walked with her to the performance area, and Penelope was acutely aware of his presence beside her, of the subtle scent of leather and soap that clung to him. She sang 6 songs that night, and with each one, she found herself looking at Cade more often than she should. He never took his eyes off her, and the intensity of his attention was both thrilling and frightening. When she sang "Jeannie with the Light Brown Hair," a love song about beauty and devotion, she saw something shift in his expression, a longing that mirrored the ache she felt growing in her own chest. After her final song, as the applause died down and the crowd began to return to their drinking and gambling, Cade approached her with a serious expression. "Walk with me," he asked quietly. "Just for a few minutes. There is something I need to say." They left the saloon and strolled down the street toward Clear Creek, where the water rushed cold and clear from the mountains. The night was cool, and Penelope pulled her shawl tight around her shoulders. Cade walked close beside her, not touching but near enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from him. "I have been thinking about you all week," he said once they were away from the noise of the saloon. "I know I should not have been. You are a married woman, and I have no right to any feelings about you, but I cannot seem to help it." Penelope's breath caught. "Cade, we should not talk about this. I know, but I need you to understand something." He stopped walking and turned to face her. "The way you sing, it is like you are sharing your very soul, and I have been privileged to see that, to witness that beauty and vulnerability. It has affected me deeply, more deeply than I expected. You hardly know me. I know you have been hurt. I know you are trapped in a loveless marriage. I know you have a strength and grace that shine through despite everything you have endured. And I know that hearing you sing makes me want to be the kind of man who deserves to have someone like you sing just for him." He paused, searching her face. "Am I alone in feeling this way? Tell me honestly, and if you say yes, I will step back. I will be nothing more than a friendly face in the crowd." Penelope knew she should lie, should protect them both from the dangerous path these feelings might lead them down. But she had already sacrificed so much of her truth, had already silenced herself in so many ways. She could not bring herself to lie about this. "You are not alone," she whispered. "I think about you too, more than I should, more than is proper." Cade closed his eyes briefly, and when he opened them again, she saw both joy and pain in their depths. "What are we going to do?" "I do not know. I am married to Samuel. That is the reality of my situation. Is he good to you? Truly, he is not cruel. He provides for me. But there is no warmth, no affection. I am useful to him, nothing more." "That is not enough," Cade said fiercely. "You deserve so much more than that. What I deserve and what I have are 2 different things." Penelope looked up at the stars scattered across the vast Colorado sky. "I made a choice when I came here. I cannot simply unmake it because I have met someone who makes me feel alive again. I understand, but I want you to know something, Penelope." He said her name like a caress, and it made her shiver. "For as long as you are willing to come to the Silver Bell, I will be there. I will listen to you sing, and I will treasure every moment. And if you ever need help, for any reason, you can count on me. That is all I can offer, but I offer it freely." She wanted to touch him, wanted to feel his hand in hers, but she kept her arms wrapped tight around herself. "You are a rare man, Cade Lawson. I just know what matters. And you matter, Penelope. Do not ever forget that." They walked back to the general store in comfortable silence. And when they parted ways at the bottom of the stairs, Penelope felt as though she were leaving part of herself with him. She climbed to the dark apartment and lay awake for hours, her mind spinning with thoughts of what might have been if she had come to Black Hawk under different circumstances, if she had met Cade before she had bound herself to Samuel. The pattern repeated over the following weeks. Every time Samuel traveled to Denver, Penelope went to the Silver Bell and sang. The townspeople began to anticipate her performances, and the saloon was always packed on the nights she appeared. Some brought their wives and daughters, drawn by the promise of respectable entertainment. Big Tom started calling her the Songbird of Black Hawk, and the name stuck. And every night, Cade was there, watching her with those intense eyes, walking her home afterward, talking with her about everything and nothing. They were careful never to touch, never to let their conversations cross into dangerous territory, but the connection between them deepened with each passing week. Penelope found herself living for those Saturday nights, counting the days until she could see him again. Samuel seemed oblivious to the change in her. He had always been uninterested in her inner life, and his detachment now worked in her favor. As long as the store was well managed and his meals were ready on time, he asked no questions about how she spent her evenings during his trips. October faded into November, and the mountain air grew colder. Snow dusted the peaks above Black Hawk, and the leaves turned brilliant gold before falling from the aspens. Penelope had been in Colorado for 2 months, and while her marriage remained as hollow as ever, she no longer felt the crushing loneliness that had nearly broken her in those first weeks. She had music again, and she had Cade, even if all they could share were stolen conversations and meaningful glances. One Saturday night in mid-November, after she had finished singing and most of the crowd had returned to their drinks, a well-dressed man in his 30s approached her. He had slick black hair and calculating eyes, and something about him immediately put Penelope on edge. "Miss Penelope, that was truly magnificent," he said, bowing slightly. "Allow me to introduce myself. I am Victor Drummond, owner of the Ace High Saloon in Central City. I came to Black Hawk specifically to hear you sing after hearing reports of your talent." "That is very kind of you, Mr. Drummond." Penelope glanced around, looking for Cade, and spotted him standing near the bar, watching the interaction with a frown. "I would like to make you a business proposition. I will pay you $20 a week to sing at my establishment 4 nights a week. The Ace High is much larger and more refined than this place, and you would have a proper stage and better accompaniment. A voice like yours should not be wasted on this small audience." $20 a week was a staggering amount of money, more than Penelope could earn in months of work at the general store, but she shook her head. "I am flattered, Mr. Drummond, but I cannot accept. I sing here for pleasure, not for money, and I could not travel to Central City regularly even if I wished to. Your husband could surely spare you a few nights. I would provide safe transportation and accommodations." "My husband does not know I sing in saloons at all," Penelope said firmly. "And I prefer to keep it that way. Thank you for your generous offer, but I must decline." Drummond's expression hardened. "That is a foolish decision. You could make a real career for yourself instead of hiding your talent in this backwater town." The lady said no. Cade appeared at Penelope's side, his voice carrying a warning edge. "You should respect her decision and be on your way." Drummond looked Cade up and down dismissively. "This does not concern you, Cowboy. Anything that concerns Miss Penelope concerns me." Cade's hand rested casually on his belt, near the revolver he wore. He had never struck Penelope as a violent man, but there was steel in his posture now, a readiness to protect that made Drummond take a step back. "Fine. Waste your talent if you wish." Drummond turned and stalked toward the door, pausing only to call back, "But you will regret turning down my offer. Opportunities like this do not come twice." After he left, Penelope let out a shaky breath. Thank you for intervening. He made me uncomfortable. Victor Drummond has a reputation, Cade said, his jaw tight. He runs gambling and some less savory operations out of Central City. I did not like the way he was looking at you, as though I were a possession he wanted to acquire. Exactly. Cade guided her toward a quiet corner of the saloon. You should be careful, Penelope. Your singing has made you famous in these parts, and that kind of attention can be dangerous. I never intended to become famous. I just wanted to sing again. I know, but perhaps you should consider telling your husband about your performances. If he heard about them from someone else, it might cause trouble. Penelope laughed bitterly. Samuel would forbid me from ever entering a saloon again. He made his feelings about such places very clear. This has been my one source of joy, Cade. I cannot give it up. Then we will find a way to keep you safe. He reached out as though to take her hand, then caught himself and pulled back. The aborted gesture felt more intimate than any touch they had shared. I will always protect you, Penelope. I hope you know that. I do. She looked into his eyes and saw the depth of feeling he was working so hard to control. Cade, I wish things were different. I wish I had met you before I answered Samuel's letter. I wish I could be free to explore whatever this is between us, but I am not free, and wishing does not change reality. I know. His voice was rough with emotion. But I cannot stop feeling what I feel. When you sing, it is like you are speaking directly to my soul. And these moments we have together, they are the best part of my life. Even if we can never have more than this, I will treasure what we do have. Tears pricked Penelope's eyes. You are making this so hard. I am sorry. I should not have said anything. No, I am glad you did, because I feel the same way, and holding it inside was becoming unbearable. She glanced around the saloon, aware that they were attracting curious looks. I should go. It is late. I will walk you home. They made their way through the cold November night, their breath misting in the air. When they reached the general store, Penelope lingered at the bottom of the stairs, unwilling to end the evening. Cade, if circumstances were different, if I were not married, would you court me properly? In a heartbeat, he said without hesitation. I would court you with flowers and poetry and every romantic gesture I could think of. I would ask permission to call on you, take you on picnics, show you all the beautiful places in these mountains, and I would feel like the luckiest man alive if you agreed to be mine. That sounds wonderful. She allowed herself to imagine it for a moment, a life where she could love Cade openly and honestly. Then she shook her head, dispelling the fantasy. But that is not our reality. I should say good night. Good night, Penelope. Sing again next week. If Samuel travels, yes, I will be here. She climbed the stairs and entered the apartment, carrying the ache of unfulfilled longing into the lonely darkness. Below, Cade stood for a long time in the cold street, looking up at the windows above the general store before finally walking back to where he had tied his horse. The next week, Samuel did not travel to Denver. He stayed in Black Hawk, and Penelope had to content herself with the mundane routines of married life. She found herself watching the calendar obsessively, waiting for his next trip. The days felt longer when she knew she would not see Cade, and she caught herself humming while she worked, her body remembering the joy of singing even when her circumstances did not allow it. On Wednesday afternoon, a woman came into the store whom Penelope had not seen before. She was in her early 40s, handsome rather than pretty, with sharp eyes and an air of confidence. Good afternoon, Penelope greeted her. May I help you find something? Are you Penelope Morton? The woman asked, studying her closely. I am. I am Margaret Hayes. My husband owns the hardware store across the street. She moved closer, lowering her voice. I wanted to speak with you about something delicate. May we talk privately? Unease prickled along Penelope's spine, but she nodded and gestured toward the back of the store where they would not be overheard. "What is this about, Mrs. Hayes? I heard you sing at the Silver Bell 2 weeks ago." "My husband took me on a Saturday evening, as he had been telling me about your performances, and I wanted to hear for myself." Margaret paused. "You have a remarkable gift, my dear, but I feel I must warn you as one woman to another. There is talk in town about you and that cowboy, Cade Lawson." Penelope felt her face flush. "What kind of talk?" "People have noticed how much time you spend together after your performances, how he watches you when you sing. There are those who are suggesting the relationship is not entirely proper." "We have never done anything improper," Penelope said firmly, though her heart was racing. "Cade is a friend who walks me home safely. That is all. I believe you." Margaret's expression was sympathetic. "But you must understand how things look. You are a married woman spending time alone with a single man. In a place like Black Hawk, such things do not go unnoticed or unremarked upon." "Does my husband know?" "Not yet, as far as I am aware. But it is only a matter of time before someone tells him." "I thought you should be forewarned so you can decide how to handle the situation." Margaret placed a gentle hand on Penelope's arm. "I do not judge you, dear. I have met Samuel Morton and I can guess what kind of husband he is. But you must be careful. A woman's reputation is a fragile thing, and once damaged, it can never be fully repaired." After Margaret left, Penelope stood in the back of the store, her mind racing. She had been foolish to think she and Cade could continue their friendship without consequences. In a small town like Black Hawk, everyone noticed everything, and tongues wagged freely. If Samuel heard rumors about her and Cade, he would be furious. He might even throw her out, and then where would she be? A woman alone with no money and a damaged reputation had few options, and none of them were good. But the thought of giving up her singing, of never seeing Cade again, filled her with such despair that she could barely breathe. Those Saturday nights had given her life meaning again. They had reminded her that she was more than just a housekeeper and shopkeeper, that she had value beyond her usefulness to Samuel. That evening she tried to broach the subject with her husband. "Samuel, might I ask you something?" He looked up from his dinner, his expression already impatient. "What is it?" "I know you do not approve of saloons, but I have been thinking about my singing. Before I came here, it was an important part of my life. I wonder if there might be respectable venues where I could perform, perhaps the church or private gatherings." "Why would you want to do such a thing?" Samuel set down his fork, frowning. "You have responsibilities here. The store, the house, your duties as my wife. That should be occupation enough. It would not interfere with my duties. I could perform on evenings when the store is closed." "The answer is no." His voice was flat and final. "I will not have my wife making a spectacle of herself. You will focus on the work I brought you here to do and leave such frivolous pursuits behind. Is that understood?" Penelope bit back the angry words that wanted to spill out. "Yes, Samuel. I understand." He returned to his meal as though the conversation had never happened, and Penelope sat in seething silence, hating him in that moment more than she had ever hated anyone. He had no right to take her voice from her, no right to reduce her to nothing more than a servant in his house. But he was her husband, and the law gave him every right to control her life in whatever way he saw fit. That night, as she lay beside Samuel's sleeping form, Penelope made a decision. She would not give up her singing, and she would not give up seeing Cade. She would simply be more careful. If Samuel was going to deny her even the smallest joy, then she would take what happiness she could find in the moments he was away. She knew it was dangerous, knew she was risking everything, but the alternative was a slow death of the spirit, and she could not bear that. December arrived with heavy snows that blanketed Black Hawk in white and made travel treacherous. Samuel had to postpone his Denver trip twice because of the weather, and Penelope felt like a caged bird, pacing the confines of the store and apartment with growing desperation. When he finally left on a clear Saturday morning, promising to return by Wednesday, she nearly wept with relief. That night, she went to the Silver Bell wearing her warmest cloak and boots. The saloon was less crowded than usual because of the cold, but those who had braved the weather cheered when she entered. Cade was there, as always, and the smile that lit his face when he saw her made her heart soar. She sang "I Dream of Jeannie" and listened to the mockingbird and several Christmas carols that seemed appropriate for the season. The men sang along with the carols, their rough voices blending with hers in a moment of genuine community and joy. When she finished her final song, Cade helped her with her cloak and they stepped out into the frigid night. Snow crunched beneath their boots as they walked, and their breath formed clouds in the air. The streets were nearly deserted, and Penelope felt a sense of freedom in the winter darkness, as though the cold had created a private world just for them. "I missed you these past weeks," Cade said softly. "The days are longer when I know I will not see you. I feel the same way." Penelope pulled her cloak tighter. "Cade, there is something I need to tell you. People in town are talking about us. A woman warned me that our friendship is causing gossip." He stopped walking, his expression troubled. "I was afraid of that. I have tried to be careful to keep proper distance, but I cannot hide how I feel when you sing. I know, and I do not want you to hide it. Those moments when I look at you and see that you truly hear me, truly see me, they mean everything." She turned to face him. "But we need to be more cautious. If Samuel hears the rumors, there will be consequences." "What do you want to do?" "I want to keep singing. I want to keep seeing you, but perhaps we should not walk home together anymore. It is the most visible part of our time together." Cade was silent for a long moment, his jaw working. "If that is what you think is best, I will respect your wishes, but I do not like the idea of you walking alone at night. It is only a few blocks, and Black Hawk is generally safe." "Generally is not always." He looked at her intently. "At least let me follow at a distance, just to make sure you reach home safely. I will stay back far enough that no one will think we are together, but close enough to help if you need me." "You would do that, Penelope. I would do anything for you. Surely you know that by now." The sincerity in his voice made tears spring to her eyes. "What did I do to deserve your devotion? You exist. That is enough." They stood in the snowy street, so close she could feel the warmth of his body, and Penelope felt the pull between them like a physical force. It would be so easy to close the distance, to let herself feel his arms around her just once, to taste the kiss she had been dreaming about for weeks. But she knew that if they crossed that line, there would be no going back. They would be guilty of more than just friendship, and the consequences would be far more severe. "I should go," she whispered, though she did not move. "Yes, you should." He did not move either. For a heartbeat, they teetered on the edge of a choice that would change everything. Then Penelope took a deliberate step backward, breaking the spell. "Good night, Cade." "Good night, Penelope." She forced herself to turn and walk away, aware of him watching her go. When she reached the general store and looked back, she saw his silhouette in the distance, standing guard until she was safely inside. The gesture was both comforting and heartbreaking. December wore on, and Penelope sang at the Silver Bell whenever Samuel's schedule allowed. She and Cade maintained their careful distance in public, but the connection between them only deepened. They communicated with glances and small gestures, an entire conversation happening in the space of a shared look during a song. 2 weeks before Christmas, a late-night knock on the apartment door startled Penelope from sleep. Samuel was in Denver again, not due back until morning. She wrapped a shawl over her nightgown and approached the door cautiously. Who is it? Cade. Please, Penelope, I need to talk to you. It is important. She opened the door to find him standing in the hallway, snow dusting his hat and shoulders. His face was drawn with worry. What is wrong? What has happened? Can I come in? Just for a moment. I know it is not proper, but I would not ask if it was not urgent. She hesitated only briefly before stepping aside. Cade entered, removing his hat and staying near the door as though aware of the impropriety of his presence. I heard something tonight that you need to know about. Victor Drummond, that saloon owner from Central City, he has been spreading rumors about you. What kind of rumors? He is telling people that you are not actually married to Samuel Morton, that you are pretending to be respectable while working as a saloon singer. He is claiming you turned down his job offer because you are already making money through other means. Cade's jaw tightened. He is implying you are a prostitute, Penelope. She felt the blood drain from her face. That is a vicious lie. I know it is, but the damage is being done. People are starting to question your character, and if Samuel hears these stories, he trailed off, the implication clear. He will believe I have brought shame upon him. He will throw me out. Penelope sank onto a chair, her mind reeling. What am I going to do? Cade crossed the room and knelt beside her chair, taking her hands in his. It was the first time they had touched beyond a polite handshake, and the contact sent warmth flooding through her. Leave him. Leave Samuel and come away with me. Cade, I cannot. Yes, you can. We will go to Denver or even further if necessary. I have some money saved. I can find work anywhere and you can sing. We will make a life together, the life we both want. It is not that simple. I would be a married woman running away with another man. The scandal would follow us anywhere we went. Then we will go where no one knows us. We will start fresh. His hands tightened on hers, his eyes blazing with intensity. I love you, Penelope. I have loved you since the first night I heard you sing. I cannot stand by and watch your life be destroyed by malicious gossip and a husband who does not appreciate what he has. Come with me, please. Tears streamed down her face. I love you too. I have tried so hard not to, but I cannot help it. You are everything Samuel is not. Everything I hoped to find when I came west. Then say yes. Say you will come with me. She wanted to say yes more than she had ever wanted anything. But the practical part of her mind, the part that had kept her alive through scandal and poverty in Boston, forced her to think clearly. If I leave Samuel, he could have me arrested for abandoning my marital duties. The law is not on the side of women who leave their husbands, and even if we escaped legal consequences, what kind of life would we have? You would be branded as a man who stole another man's wife. I would be an adulteress. Every door would close to us. I do not care about doors or what people think. You say that now, but you would come to resent me eventually, and I could not bear that. She pulled her hands free and stood, pacing to the window. There has to be another way. I need to clear my name, prove that Drummond is lying. Then maybe I can find grounds to leave Samuel legally. On what grounds? He is not physically abusive. He provides for you. No court would grant you a divorce simply because he is cold and unloving. I know. She pressed her forehead against the cold glass. I am trapped, Cade. There is no way out. He came to stand behind her, close enough that she could feel the heat of his body but still not touching. There is always a way out. We just have to find it. They stood in silence for a long moment, both of them thinking, searching for a solution that seemed just out of reach. Finally, Cade spoke again, his voice heavy with resignation. I should go. If anyone saw me come up here and reports it, that will make things even worse for you. Yes, you should go. But she turned to face him, memorizing every detail of his features in the dim lamplight. Thank you for warning me about Drummond, and thank you for offering me a way out even though I cannot take it. The offer stands. Always. If you change your mind, if things become unbearable, you know where to find me. I do." He moved toward the door, then paused with his hand on the knob. "Penelope, no matter what happens, I want you to remember something. You are worthy of love and respect and joy. Do not let Samuel or anyone else convince you otherwise." "I will try to remember." After he left, Penelope stood at the window and watched him ride away through the snowy streets. Her hands still tingled from his touch, and her heart ached with the weight of everything they could not have. She had never felt so torn between what was right and what her soul desperately needed. The next morning, Samuel returned from Denver in a foul mood. Business had not gone as well as he had hoped, and he took his frustration out on Penelope, criticizing everything from the way she had arranged the store shelves to the seasoning in his breakfast eggs. She bore his complaints in silence, her mind elsewhere, trying to figure out how to handle the situation with Drummond. That afternoon, Margaret Hayes came into the store again. She waited until another customer had left before approaching the counter. "I heard about the rumors Victor Drummond is spreading. I wanted you to know that my husband and I do not believe a word of it. We have told everyone who will listen that you are a respectable married woman, and that Drummond is a liar with an axe to grind." "Thank you, Margaret. That means more than you know. There are others who feel the same way. The people who have heard you sing, who have seen your character, they know the truth. But I will not lie to you, Penelope. There are also those who are eager to believe the worst. You need to do something to publicly establish your reputation. What do you suggest? Sing at the church Christmas service. Reverend Mills has been looking for someone to perform special music, and if you sing in that setting, it will remind everyone that you are a godly woman with a gift from the Lord. It will make Drummond's lies seem even more absurd. It was good advice, and Penelope seized on it. Do you think the Reverend would agree? I will speak to him today. I am sure he will be delighted to have you. That evening, Penelope approached Samuel at dinner. The church needs someone to sing at the Christmas service. I would like to volunteer. He looked up from his plate, suspicion flickering in his eyes. Why this sudden interest in public performance? It is Christmas, a holy season. I thought it would be a way to give back to the community and honor God with the gift He gave me. She kept her voice steady and earnest. Surely there is nothing improper about singing in church. Samuel considered this for a long moment. I suppose not. It might even be good for business if people associate the Morton name with respectability and community service. Very well, you may do it. Relief flooded through her. Thank you, Samuel. The church Christmas service was held on December 23rd, and it seemed like the entire town turned out for the occasion. Penelope stood at the front of the small church in her best dress, her hands clasped in front of her, and looked out at the faces of the people who had become her neighbors. Samuel sat in the front pew, looking uncomfortable in his Sunday clothes. Somewhere in the back, she knew Cade was watching, though she had not allowed herself to search for him. She sang, "O Holy Night," her voice soaring through the church with such power and beauty that several people openly wept. She followed it with Silent Night and Hark the Herald Angels Sing, and by the time she finished, there was not a dry eye in the congregation. Reverend Mills praised her gift and thanked her for sharing it with them, and the congregation applauded enthusiastically. After the service, people crowded around to thank her and wish her a blessed Christmas. Samuel stood nearby, accepting congratulations on his wife's talent with a stiff nod, as though he had personally arranged her performance. But Penelope did not care about his arrogance in that moment. She had done what Margaret suggested. She had established herself as a respectable woman in the eyes of the community. As people began to file out into the cold evening, Penelope found herself face to face with Cade. He had waited until the crowd thinned, positioning himself so that Samuel would not notice their interaction. "That was beautiful," he said quietly. "Thank you for that gift. Thank you for being here. I will always be here." He glanced toward where Samuel was talking with the Reverend. "Have you heard any more from Drummond?" "No, but Margaret Hayes said the rumors are still circulating. I hope tonight helped counter some of that." "It did. No one who heard you sing those hymns could believe you are anything but a good woman." He smiled slightly. "Though I have to admit, I prefer hearing you sing in the saloon. There is more of your true self in those performances. My true self is not appropriate for church. Your true self is magnificent wherever you choose to reveal it." He tipped his hat. "Merry Christmas, Penelope." "Merry Christmas, Cade." She watched him leave, then allowed Samuel to escort her home through the snowy streets. For the first time in weeks, she felt a small spark of hope. Maybe she could find a way to navigate this situation. Maybe she could protect her reputation, keep her voice, and maintain her connection with Cade, all without destroying her life completely. Christmas came and went with little celebration in the Morton household. Samuel gave her a practical gift of fabric for new dresses, and she gave him a new pipe she had purchased weeks earlier. They attended Christmas dinner at the boarding house with other residents of Black Hawk, and the meal was pleasant enough, though Penelope found herself watching the families around her with envy. The easy affection between husbands and wives, the warmth and laughter, all of it highlighted the coldness of her own marriage. January 1879 arrived with bitter cold and heavy snows that shut down much of the commerce in Black Hawk. The mines kept operating, but travel to and from Denver became difficult and dangerous. Samuel was forced to stay in town for nearly 3 weeks, and Penelope felt the walls of her prison closing in. She could not go to the Silver Bell while he was home, could not see Cade, could barely even remember what freedom felt like. She started to notice changes in Samuel's behavior. He watched her more closely, asked more questions about how she spent her days. One evening in late January, he came upstairs from the store with a strange expression on his face. "I had an interesting conversation today," he said, removing his coat slowly. "A gentleman from Central City happened to stop in. He mentioned hearing about a talented singer at the Silver Bell Saloon who goes by the name of Miss Penelope. He thought it was quite a coincidence that she shares your first name." Penelope's heart began to race, but she kept her voice calm. "There must be many women named Penelope in Colorado." "That is what I thought, but then he described her appearance. Honey brown hair, blue eyes, slender build. Quite a resemblance to you," he said. "I cannot account for other women's appearances, Samuel." He moved closer, his eyes hard. "I also heard that this Miss Penelope from the saloon sang at the church Christmas service. Now that would be quite strange, would it not? A saloon singer performing hymns." She had been caught in the lie, and there was no point in denying it further. "Yes, I have been singing at the Silver Bell on Saturday nights when you travel to Denver. I saw no harm in it. I only performed respectable songs, and I never stayed late or did anything improper." Samuel's hand lashed out so quickly she did not have time to flinch. The slap caught her across the cheek, snapping her head to the side and bringing tears to her eyes. It was the first time he had struck her, and the shock of it was almost worse than the pain. "You lied to me," he said coldly. "You deliberately disobeyed my direct orders about staying out of saloons. You made a fool of me in front of the entire town. I needed to sing." She touched her burning cheek, trying to keep her voice steady. "It was the one thing that gave me joy. You have given me nothing else, Samuel. No affection, no companionship, no love. Just endless work and loneliness. I gave you security and respectability, which is more than you had when you answered my advertisement. You should have been grateful for what you had instead of seeking attention in a saloon like a common whore." The cruel words struck deeper than his hand had. "I am not a whore," I sang, "nothing more. I also heard about the cowboy who escorts you home every night, Cade Lawson. People have been talking about the two of you for months, apparently. They say he watches you with lovesick eyes while you perform." Samuel's expression was vicious now. "Have you been unfaithful to me, wife?" "No." The denial was automatic and true. "We have never done anything improper. He is a friend, nothing more." "You are lying again. I can see it in your face. You have feelings for him." Penelope could not deny that, and her silence was damning. Samuel grabbed her arm, his fingers digging in hard enough to bruise. "You will never see him again. You will never sing in that saloon again. You will not leave this building except to work in the store, and I will be watching you every moment. Do you understand me? You cannot keep me prisoner. I can do whatever I want. You are my wife, my property under the law. I should throw you out into the street for your betrayal, but I will not give you the satisfaction of running to your cowboy. Instead, you will stay here and learn to be a proper, obedient wife." He released her arm with a shove that sent her stumbling backward. "Get out of my sight. Sleep in the sitting room tonight. I do not want to look at you." Penelope fled to the sitting room and curled up on the hard settee, her body shaking with shock and fear. Samuel had shown his true colors at last, and she realized how precarious her position truly was. He could hurt her, control her, and society would call it his right as her husband. She had no money of her own, nowhere to go, no legal recourse. For the first time, she seriously considered Cade's offer to run away together. But even as she thought it, she knew the problems with that plan. Samuel would pursue them, might even have them arrested. Cade could lose everything trying to help her, and she could not bear to be the cause of his ruin. She spent a sleepless night on the settee, her mind spinning with fear and desperation. By morning, her cheek was bruised and her arm ached where Samuel had grabbed her. He came out of the bedroom and looked at her with cold satisfaction. "Cover that bruise before you work in the store. I will not have customers seeing evidence of your punishment and getting the wrong idea." "Yes, Samuel." She kept her eyes down, not wanting to provoke him further. The days that followed were a nightmare. Samuel watched her constantly, sometimes standing in the doorway to the store just to make sure she was not talking to anyone unnecessarily. He monitored every customer interaction, every movement she made. At night, he locked the door to the apartment from the inside and pocketed the key, making it impossible for her to leave even if she wanted to. She had no way to get word to Cade about what had happened. Saturday came and went with no possibility of going to the Silver Bell. She imagined him waiting for her, wondering why she had not come, perhaps thinking she had chosen to stay away. The thought of him believing she had abandoned their friendship made her chest ache. A week after Samuel had discovered her secret, a letter arrived at the store. It was addressed to Penelope, and Samuel opened it before she could reach for it. His face darkened as he read. "It is from that cowboy," he said, his voice dripping with contempt. "He wants to know if you are all right. He says he is worried because you did not come sing last Saturday." Samuel tore the letter into pieces. "You will not be receiving any more correspondence from him or anyone else. All mail will go through me first. Samuel, please, you are being cruel. I am being a responsible husband, managing a disobedient wife. If you had behaved properly from the beginning, none of this would be necessary." That afternoon, while Samuel was in the back room doing inventory, Margaret Hayes came into the store. She took one look at Penelope's face and her expression filled with concern. "What happened to you? Is that a bruise?" "I fell," Penelope said automatically, aware that Samuel might be listening. "Clumsy of me." Margaret did not believe the lie, that much was clear. She leaned across the counter and lowered her voice. "If you need help, there are people who will assist you. You do not have to endure abuse." "I am fine, truly, but thank you for your concern. At least let me give you this." Margaret slipped a folded piece of paper into Penelope's hand. "Hide it. Do not let him find it." Before Penelope could respond, Samuel emerged from the back room. Margaret straightened quickly, adopting a casual tone. "Thank you for your help, Mrs. Morton. I will take these supplies." After she left, Penelope waited until Samuel was distracted before unfolding the paper. It was a brief note in an unfamiliar handwriting. "Cade is desperate to know you are safe. He wants to help. Send word through Margaret if you need him. We are all worried about you." Tears blurred her vision, and she quickly tucked the note into her sleeve. Just knowing that people cared, that Cade had not forgotten her, gave her strength she desperately needed. That night, after Samuel had locked them in for the evening, Penelope made a decision. She could not live this way indefinitely. She would rather risk everything by running away than slowly lose herself in this prison of a marriage. But she needed to be smart about it. She needed a plan that would give her and Cade a real chance at a future together. Over the following days, she began to prepare in small ways. She hid away bits of food that would not spoil, tucked them in the back of the cupboard where Samuel would not notice. She managed to pocket a few coins from the cash register when Samuel was not looking, small amounts that might not be missed in his accounting. She watched Samuel's routines carefully, noting when he was most distracted, when he slept most deeply. February arrived with no break in Samuel's vigilance. The snow continued to fall, and Black Hawk remained isolated from Denver. Penelope felt time slipping away, her opportunity for escape narrowing with each passing day. Then, on the second Saturday in February, Samuel announced he had to travel to a nearby town to negotiate a business deal. "I will be gone overnight," he said, watching her carefully. "I am locking the apartment door from the outside. You will stay here until I return tomorrow evening. I am leaving you enough food and water, and you can use the chamber pot if necessary. Do not try to leave. I will know if you do." "Samuel, you cannot lock me in. What if there is a fire? Then you will climb out the window like anyone else would." His expression was pitiless. "I do not trust you, wife. You have given me no reason to. This is for your own good." After he left, Penelope heard the key turn in the lock and his footsteps descending the outside stairs. She ran to the door and tried the handle, confirming what she already knew. She was truly trapped now. But Samuel had made a mistake. In his arrogance, he had assumed she was too frightened or too helpless to take action. He had not considered that desperation might make her brave. She went to the window and looked down at the street below. It was a 15-foot drop to the snow-covered ground, too far to jump safely. But the roof of the store extended out below the window, and if she could reach that, she could slide down to the edge where the drop was shorter. It was dangerous, possibly foolish, but it was her only chance. She waited until full dark, then dressed in her warmest clothes, layering everything she owned. She packed a small bag with the food she had hidden, what little money she had saved, and a few essential items. Then she opened the window, letting in a blast of frigid air, and climbed out onto the narrow sill. The wind tore at her as she eased herself down, her boots scrabbling for purchase on the icy wood siding. Her fingers were already going numb as she gripped the window frame, lowering herself until her feet touched the roof of the store. She let go and landed hard, her boots sliding on the snow-covered shingles. For a terrifying moment, she thought she would slide right off the edge, but she managed to catch herself and crawl to where the roof met the wall. From there, she lowered herself again, dangling from the edge of the roof before dropping the final 8 feet into a snowdrift. The impact knocked the breath from her lungs, but she was down. She was free. Penelope pulled herself from the drift and began running, her bag clutched against her chest. She knew exactly where she was going. Cade had once mentioned that he stayed at the boarding house on 3rd Street when he was in town. She prayed he was there tonight and not at the ranch. The boarding house was dark except for a lamp in the front window. Penelope pounded on the door, looking over her shoulder constantly, terrified that Samuel might appear. After what felt like an eternity, the door opened to reveal Mrs. Cooper, the landlady, in her nightgown and robe. "Mrs. Morton, what on earth?" "I need to see Cade Lawson. Please, is he here?" "It is urgent." Mrs. Cooper took in Penelope's desperate appearance and quickly stepped aside. "Come in, dear. You are freezing. Cade is upstairs, 3rd door on the right. Go on up." Penelope climbed the stairs on shaking legs and knocked on the 3rd door. A moment later, it opened to reveal Cade in his undershirt and trousers, his hair rumpled from sleep. His eyes widened when he saw her. "Penelope, what are you doing here? How did you get away?" "I climbed out a window. Samuel locked me in, but I escaped." She was shivering violently now, the cold and shock catching up with her. "You said I could come to you if I needed help. I need help, Cade. I cannot go back to him. I would rather die." He pulled her into the room and closed the door, then wrapped a blanket around her shoulders. "Tell me everything." She told him about Samuel's discovery of her singing, about the violence and imprisonment, about the hopelessness of her situation. Cade's expression grew darker with every word, his hands clenching into fists. "That bastard," he said when she finished. "He is lucky I was not there, or I would have made him regret laying a hand on you. What am I going to do? He will come looking for me as soon as he realizes I am gone. He could have me arrested for leaving him." Cade took her cold hands in his warm ones. "We are leaving Black Hawk tonight. I have a friend in Denver who will give us shelter while we figure out our next move. Samuel will come looking, but Colorado is a big territory. We can disappear if we are smart about it. This will ruin you. You will be accused of adultery, of stealing another man's wife. I do not care." He cupped her bruised cheek gently. "I love you, Penelope. I have loved you for months. I would rather spend my life running with you than spend another day without you. We will find a way to build a life together, I promise you that. I love you too." The words felt like liberation. "I have tried so hard not to, but I cannot help it. You are the best man I have ever known." Cade pulled her into his arms, and for the first time, she allowed herself to sink into his embrace. He held her carefully as though she were made of glass, and she felt safer in that moment than she had felt in months. "We need to move quickly," he said after a moment. "Get you warmed up and then head for Denver before Samuel returns. Can you ride a horse?" "Not well, but I can manage." "Good." "We will take the road through the canyon. It will be hard going in the snow, but it is faster than waiting for the stage." Within an hour, they were riding out of Black Hawk on Cade's horse, Penelope bundled in layers of clothing and blankets, seated in front of Cade with his arms secure around her. The journey was brutal, the wind cutting through their layers and the snow making the trail treacherous. But Cade was an experienced rider, and he guided them safely through the darkness, whispering encouragement in her ear whenever she started to falter. They reached the outskirts of Denver as dawn broke over the mountains. Cade took them to a small house on the edge of town, where he pounded on the door until a man in his 30s answered, looking annoyed until he saw who it was. "Cade, what in blazes are you doing here at this hour?" "Marcus, I need your help. This is Penelope. She is in trouble and we need a place to stay while we sort things out. Can you help us?" Marcus looked between them, taking in their exhausted, desperate state, and nodded. "Come in. Tell me what is going on." They spent the next several days at Marcus's house, hiding from the world while they tried to figure out their next move. Marcus turned out to be a lawyer, which was a stroke of luck Penelope had not expected. He listened to her story with a thoughtful expression, taking notes and asking occasional questions. "The problem is that you are legally married," he said when she finished. "In the eyes of the law, you belong to Samuel Morton, and he has the right to demand your return. Running away with another man makes you guilty of desertion and potentially adultery. So there is no legal way for me to be free of him." Penelope felt despair creeping in. "I did not say that. There are a few options. First, we could pursue a divorce on the grounds of cruelty. You have witnesses who saw your bruises, and we could potentially get testimony about his violent behavior. But divorce is difficult to obtain and carries significant stigma, especially for women. What are the other options? We could argue that the marriage was never valid in the first place. Were there any irregularities in the ceremony or the circumstances under which you married?" Penelope thought back to that hasty wedding in Black Hawk. "It happened very quickly, just minutes after I arrived in town. Samuel had arranged everything in advance, pulled witnesses in from the street. I suppose it felt rushed, but I do not know if that makes it invalid. Let me investigate. If I can find any legal grounds to annul the marriage, that would be cleaner than a divorce. In the meantime, you need to stay out of sight. Samuel will be looking for you, and if he finds you before we have a legal strategy in place, he can force you to return to him." They settled into an anxious waiting period. Penelope stayed inside Marcus's house, afraid to even look out the windows in case Samuel had somehow tracked them to Denver. Cade spent his days trying to find work that would allow him to stay close by, and his evenings sitting with Penelope, talking about their hopes for the future and the life they would build together once she was free. One evening, as they sat by the fire while Marcus worked late at his office, Cade took Penelope's hand. "I have been thinking about what we will do once all this is sorted out. I have enough saved to buy a small piece of land, maybe start a ranch of our own. Nothing big, just enough to raise some cattle and horses. You could sing wherever you wanted and we could build a real home together." "That sounds like a dream." She leaned her head on his shoulder. "I never thought I could have something like that. A real home with someone who loves me." "You deserve everything good in this world, Penelope. I intend to spend the rest of my life making sure you have it." "I do not deserve you." "Yes, you do. Stop thinking you are not worthy of love. Your father's failures and Samuel's cruelty do not define your value. You are brave and talented and beautiful, and I am the lucky one." She turned to look at him, seeing the absolute sincerity in his eyes. "Kiss me, Cade. I have been wanting you to for so long. You are still married. I do not want to compromise you further. I do not care about that anymore. Samuel broke our marriage vows when he raised his hand to me. I want to know what it feels like to be kissed by a man who loves me." Cade cupped her face in his hands, his touch gentle and reverent. Then he lowered his mouth to hers in a kiss that was everything she had dreamed it would be. Tender and passionate, claiming and giving, a promise of all the love they would share in the years to come. When they finally pulled apart, both were breathing hard, and Penelope felt as though her heart might burst from happiness. "I will marry you properly someday," Cade said, resting his forehead against hers. "With flowers and music and all the romance you deserve, and I will spend every day of our lives together making you happy. You already make me happy just by being you." 2 weeks after their arrival in Denver, Marcus came home with news. "I found something. Samuel Morton was married before to a woman named Clara Henderson. She died in 1875, but there is no record of a death certificate being filed in Colorado. I did some digging and found out that she might have left him and moved to California. If she is still alive, his marriage to you is invalid. He would be guilty of bigamy. How do we find out if she is alive? I have contacted authorities in California to search for records. It may take some time, but if we can prove she is living, you are free. The marriage to Samuel would be void from the beginning. Hope blazed bright in Penelope's chest. How long will it take? Could be weeks, could be months. But I have also been making inquiries in Black Hawk. Samuel has been telling everyone that you ran off with a cowboy, that you were unfaithful and unstable. He is painting himself as the wronged husband. Of course he is. Penelope felt anger rising. He will not accept any responsibility for his own actions. Public opinion does not matter if we can prove bigamy. That is a criminal offense. He could face prosecution. As they waited for word from California, Penelope began to venture out of the house, though always with Cade at her side. Denver was a bustling city compared to Black Hawk, full of possibilities and opportunities. One day, as they walked through the downtown area, they passed a theater advertising musical performances. "You could sing here," Cade said, pausing to look at the poster. "Once everything is settled, you could have a real career." "I do not need a career. I just need to be able to sing when I want to for people who appreciate it, like those miners in the Silver Bell. You should have both, the freedom to sing and the recognition your talent deserves." They were so absorbed in their conversation that they almost did not notice the man approaching until he was right in front of them. Victor Drummond stood blocking their path, a nasty smile on his face. Well, the runaway bride and her cowboy. "I heard you had disappeared from Black Hawk, but I never imagined I would run into you here." Cade stepped in front of Penelope protectively. "Keep walking, Drummond. We have nothing to say to you." "Oh, but I think we do. You see, Samuel Morton has offered a substantial reward for information about his wife's whereabouts. He is quite eager to have her back. As a concerned citizen, I feel it is my duty to inform him that I spotted you in Denver." "You do not know where we are staying," Penelope said, trying to keep her voice steady despite the fear rushing through her. "True. But Denver is not that big a city. I am sure Samuel will be able to find you easily enough once he knows to look here." Drummond tipped his hat mockingly. "Enjoy your freedom while it lasts." He walked away, leaving Penelope and Cade standing frozen in the street. "We need to get back to Marcus's house," Cade said urgently. "Pack your things. We may need to move quickly." They hurried back and found Marcus already home, sorting through papers at his desk. "I was just about to send for you," he said when they burst in. "I heard from California. Clara Henderson is alive and living in San Francisco. She never obtained a divorce from Samuel Morton. His marriage to you is void." Relief and triumph surged through Penelope. "We can prove it. I have documentation being sent by wire. It should arrive within a few days. Once I have it, we can file the necessary paperwork to have your marriage annulled. You will be free, Penelope." "There is a problem," Cade said, and explained their encounter with Drummond. "Samuel could be here within days. If he finds us before the annulment is finalized, he might try to force Penelope to return with him. Then we move faster. I will call in some favors, expedite the process. With luck, we can have everything finalized before Samuel arrives." Marcus looked at Penelope with determination. "You are not going back to him. I will make sure of that." The next few days were a blur of legal proceedings and tense waiting. Marcus worked day and night, pulling strings and navigating the bureaucracy with impressive skill. The documentation from California arrived, and Marcus filed the annulment paperwork immediately. All they needed was a judge's signature, and Penelope would be free. On the fourth day after their encounter with Drummond, Marcus came home with the news they had been waiting for. "It is done. The annulment has been granted. Your marriage to Samuel Morton is dissolved. You are a free woman." Penelope burst into tears, and Cade pulled her into his arms, holding her as she sobbed with relief. "It is over," he murmured against her hair. "He cannot hurt you any more." "What about the accusations of adultery?" she asked when she could speak again. "Will Samuel try to pursue that?" "He would be foolish to try. We have proof that he was guilty of bigamy, which makes him the criminal in this situation. If he attempts to cause trouble for you, I will ensure he faces prosecution. My guess is that he will quietly retreat back to Black Hawk and try to salvage what is left of his reputation. I hope you are right." But Samuel Morton was not a man who accepted defeat gracefully. 2 days later, he appeared on Marcus's doorstep with a sheriff's deputy, demanding entry and claiming his wife was being held against her will. Marcus met them at the door with Cade standing behind him. "Your wife? I think you are mistaken, Mr. Morton. There is no Mrs. Morton here." "Do not play games with me, lawyer. I know she is here, and I am taking her home." "You cannot take what does not belong to you. Miss Jensen obtained an annulment of your bigamous marriage. She is not your wife and never legally was. I have the court documents if you would like to review them." The color drained from Samuel's face as Marcus produced the papers. The sheriff's deputy read them carefully, then stepped back. "Looks legitimate to me, Mr. Morton. You best be moving along." "She is still guilty of desertion and adultery." Samuel's voice rose to a shout. "She ran off with that cowboy behind my back." "Wrong again," Marcus said calmly. "Miss Jensen left your household after you physically assaulted her and unlawfully imprisoned her. She sought refuge with friends, as any person in danger would do. Her relationship with Mr. Lawson began only after she obtained her freedom. There is no adultery. You cannot prove I hit her. Actually, we have statements from multiple witnesses who saw the bruises, including a respected businesswoman in Black Hawk. Would you like to pursue this further, Mr. Morton? Because if you do, I will ensure that you are prosecuted for bigamy, assault, and unlawful imprisonment. Your choice." Samuel looked between Marcus, Cade, and the sheriff's deputy, and whatever he saw in their faces made him realize he had lost. "This is not over," he said, but his voice lacked conviction. "Yes, it is," Penelope said, stepping into view for the first time. "You have no power over me anymore, Samuel. Go back to Black Hawk and leave me alone." He stared at her with hatred burning in his eyes, but he had no legal ground to stand on. Finally, he turned and stalked away, the sheriff's deputy following with an apologetic shrug toward Marcus. After they left, Penelope sagged against the doorframe, her legs suddenly weak. "Is it really over?" "It is really over," Marcus confirmed. "You are free to live your life however you choose." Cade turned her to face him, his hands gentle on her shoulders. "Which means I can finally ask you properly. Penelope Jensen, will you marry me? Will you build a life with me and let me spend every day trying to make you as happy as you make me?" "Yes," she said without hesitation. "Yes, I will marry you, Cade Lawson." He kissed her in front of Marcus and the whole street, a kiss full of joy and promise and the bright future stretching before them. When they finally pulled apart, both were laughing and crying at the same time. They were married a week later in a small church in Denver, with Marcus serving as witness and a handful of friends they had made during their time in the city attending. Penelope wore a simple blue dress that Cade had bought her, and she carried wildflowers that he had picked that morning. It was nothing like the cold, businesslike ceremony with Samuel. This wedding was full of love and laughter and hope. That evening, they returned to the boarding house where Cade had taken a room for them as husband and wife. As they stood together by the window, looking out at the lights of Denver, Cade wrapped his arms around her from behind and rested his chin on her shoulder. "Happy?" he asked. "Happier than I ever thought possible." She turned in his arms to face him. "I still cannot quite believe this is real." that I am actually free to love you without shame or fear. Believe it, you are mine now and I am yours and nothing will ever separate us again." He kissed her forehead, then her cheeks, then finally her lips. "I have one more surprise for you." "What is it?" He led her to the table where a piece of paper lay. "I put a down payment on that land I told you about. 50 acres north of Denver, near a town called Boulder. Good water, good grazing, and enough space to build a house and start our ranch. I thought we could call it the Songbird Ranch if you approve." Tears spilled down Penelope's cheeks. "It is perfect. You are perfect." "I am far from perfect, but I will spend the rest of my life trying to be the husband you deserve." They made love that night for the first time, and it was nothing like the cold, dutiful encounters Penelope had endured with Samuel. Cade touched her with reverence and passion, taking his time to learn what brought her pleasure, whispering words of love and devotion that made her feel cherished and beautiful. Afterward, as they lay tangled together in the darkness, Penelope felt a sense of peace and rightness that she had never experienced before. "I wish I could sing for you right now," she murmured against his chest. "Something that would capture how I feel. You can sing for me anytime you want. For the rest of our lives, you can sing for me. I think I will save my singing for special occasions from now on. I want it to be just for us, or for people we care about. No more performing for strangers in saloons. Whatever makes you happy. Though I think the world would be poorer for losing your voice. The world has had enough of my voice. Now I just want to sing for you and maybe for our children someday." "Children?" Cade raised himself on one elbow to look down at her, a smile playing at his lips. "How many are we talking about?" "At least 3 or 4. I want our house to be full of love and laughter and music. I want to give our children everything I did not have growing up, a home where they feel safe and valued and free to be themselves. Then that is what we will build together." He kissed her softly. "A home full of love and laughter and music. I cannot think of anything better." They moved to their land in early April, camping in a tent while Cade began building their house. Penelope helped as much as she could, learning skills she had never imagined needing. She cooked over an open fire, hauled water from the creek, and even helped raise the walls of their home. The work was hard, but it was satisfying in a way her duties at the general store had never been. This was building something that belonged to them, creating a future with her own hands. By late summer, the house was finished. It was small but sturdy, with a large kitchen, a cozy sitting room, and 2 bedrooms upstairs for the family they hoped to have. Cade built her a rocking chair for the porch, and Penelope sewed curtains for the windows and quilts for the beds. They furnished it slowly with pieces they bought or built themselves, each item chosen with care and love. In September, almost exactly a year after Penelope had arrived in Black Hawk, they invited Marcus and a few neighbors to a gathering at their new home. After dinner, as the sun set over the mountains, Penelope stood on the porch and sang for them. She chose songs of hope and home and new beginnings, and her voice rang out clear and strong across the land that was now hers. Cade stood watching her, and when she finished, he came to her side and took her hand. "That was beautiful. Thank you for sharing your gift with us." "I will always share it with you," she said, squeezing his hand. "You gave me back my voice when I thought it was lost forever." In October, Penelope discovered she was pregnant. She told Cade on a crisp autumn evening as they sat by the fire, and the joy on his face made her heart overflow with love. "A baby," he whispered, placing his hand gently on her still flat stomach. "We are going to have a baby. Are you happy?" Happy does not begin to cover it, ecstatic, terrified, grateful beyond words. He pulled her into his arms. "You have given me everything I ever wanted, Penelope. A home, a future, and now a family. I do not know what I did to deserve you, but I thank God for you every single day." Their son was born in June of 1880, and they named him Thomas after Penelope's father, giving the name a new legacy of love instead of shame. He had Cade's dark hair and Penelope's blue eyes, and he was the most beautiful thing either of them had ever seen. Cade held his son with such tenderness, and wonder that Penelope fell even more deeply in love with her husband. As Thomas grew, the Songbird Ranch prospered. Cade proved to be an excellent rancher, building their herd through smart purchases and careful breeding. Penelope managed their household and helped with the ranch work, and in the evenings, she would sing lullabies to Thomas that made him smile and coo with delight. When Thomas was 2, Penelope gave birth to twin daughters, Grace and Sarah. The house was suddenly very full and very loud, but Cade and Penelope would not have had it any other way. They hired help during the busiest seasons, but mostly they managed on their own, building the life they had dreamed about during those difficult months in Denver. One evening in the summer of 1885, when Thomas was 5 and the twins were 3, Cade and Penelope sat on their porch watching the children play in the yard. The ranch had grown to include a barn, a chicken coop, and several outbuildings. Their herd numbered over 100 head of cattle, and they had earned a reputation for quality stock. "I have been thinking," Cade said, reaching for Penelope's hand. "Do you ever regret how we started? All the difficulty and scandal?" "Not for a moment." She leaned her head on his shoulder. "I regret the pain, and I wish Samuel had been a better man, but I do not regret the journey that brought us together. Every hardship was worth it to end up here with you." "I feel the same way." He kissed the top of her head. "Will you sing for me?" "It has been a while since I have heard your voice, and I miss it." "What would you like to hear?" "Anything. Everything. I just want to hear you sing." So Penelope sang as the sun set over the Colorado mountains, her voice carrying across the land they had built together. She sang of love and home and dreams come true. She sang for the husband who had saved her when she was lost, for the children who filled their home with joy, for the life they had created from nothing but hope and determination. When she finished, Cade pulled her close and whispered, "Thank you for singing only for me." "Always," she promised. "For as long as I live, my voice belongs to you and our family. No one else will ever matter as much." 2 years later, they had another son, Daniel, who had his mother's talent for music. He was barely walking before he was humming along with Penelope's songs, and by the time he was 3, he could carry a tune better than many adults. Penelope began teaching him songs, and soon the house was filled with 2 voices harmonizing together. The children grew, and the ranch continued to prosper. Thomas became Cade's right hand, learning everything his father could teach him about ranching. The twins developed their own interests, Grace drawn to the business side of the ranch while Sarah preferred working with the horses. Daniel continued his musical education, and Penelope taught him everything she knew. In 1890, when Thomas was 10, Penelope received an unexpected letter. It was from Margaret Hayes, her friend from Black Hawk. Margaret wrote to inform her that Samuel Morton had died of pneumonia the previous winter. The general store had been sold to pay his debts, and there was no one to mourn him. Penelope shared the news with Cade that evening after the children were in bed. "I thought I would feel something," she admitted. "Relief or satisfaction or even sadness, but I feel nothing. He is just a stranger who briefly passed through my life." "That is because you built something better than anything he could have given you. He is irrelevant to your happiness now." "I suppose you are right, though I do feel sorry for him in a way. He had a chance at real love with me, and he threw it away because of his pride and coldness. What a waste of a life. His choices were his own. You cannot take responsibility for them." Cade drew her into his arms. "You have given me and our children more love than I ever imagined possible. That is your legacy, not the few months you spent married to Samuel Morton." As the years passed, the Lawson family became a fixture in the Boulder community. Penelope occasionally sang at church services and community gatherings, always with Cade watching proudly from the audience. Daniel developed into a fine musician, and mother and son often performed together at family events and celebrations. In 1895, when Penelope was 40 years old and Cade was 45, they celebrated their 15th wedding anniversary. Their children, now ranging from 15 to 10, organized a surprise party with help from neighbors and friends. The house was filled with people, music, and laughter. That evening, as Penelope stood in the crowded sitting room of the home they had built together, surrounded by everyone she loved, Cade came to her side and took her hand. "Speech," someone called out, and the crowd took up the demand. Cade looked at Penelope, and she nodded, giving him permission to speak. He cleared his throat and addressed their guests. "Most of you know the story of how Penelope and I met. She came to Black Hawk as a mail-order bride to another man, but fate had different plans for us both. I heard her sing one night at the Silver Bell Saloon, and in that moment, I knew my life would never be the same." Her voice silenced that rough crowd of miners and cowboys, made them remember beauty and hope in the midst of their hard lives. "And I was arrogant enough to think that maybe, just maybe, someday she might sing only for me." He turned to face Penelope directly, his eyes bright with emotion. "You gave me that gift and so much more. You gave me a home, a family, and a love deeper than I ever dreamed possible. These 15 years with you have been the greatest blessing of my life. So I want to say, in front of all these witnesses, thank you. Thank you for choosing me. Thank you for building this life with me. Thank you for singing only for me." Penelope felt tears streaming down her face as the room erupted in applause. She stood on her toes and kissed Cade, not caring that everyone was watching, wanting him and everyone else to know how much she loved him. "You did not just give me a place to sing," she said when the applause died down. "You gave me a voice when I thought I had lost it forever. You showed me what real love looks like. And you gave me a family and a home that I treasure more than anything in this world. I will sing for you until my dying day, Cade Lawson. Only for you." Someone started playing the piano, and Penelope recognized the opening notes of Lorna, the same song she had sung that first night in the Silver Bell. At Cade's encouraging nod, she began to sing, her voice as clear and powerful as it had been 17 years earlier when a young cowboy had first heard it and fallen in love. As she sang, she looked at the faces around her. Her children, watching with pride and affection. Marcus, who had traveled from Denver for the occasion, smiling at the happy ending he had helped make possible. Neighbors and friends who had become like family over the years. And most of all, Cade, standing close beside her with that same look of wonder and devotion he had worn the first time he heard her sing. This was her life now. Not the life she had planned when she left Boston, not the life she had expected when she answered Samuel Morton's advertisement. This was better than anything she could have imagined, built from heartbreak and courage and a love strong enough to overcome every obstacle. She finished the song, and the room erupted in applause and cheers. Cade pulled her into his arms and held her tight, and in that embrace, Penelope felt the culmination of every choice she had made, every risk she had taken, every moment of fear and hope that had brought her to this place. "I love you," she whispered against his chest. "I love you too," he whispered back, "today and always." The party continued late into the night, with music and dancing and stories shared around the fire. The children eventually fell asleep in various corners of the house, worn out from the excitement. As the last guests departed and Cade and Penelope stood on their porch in the moonlight, she felt a profound sense of gratitude for the winding path that had led her here. "What are you thinking about?" Cade asked, wrapping an arm around her waist. "I am thinking about that girl who stepped off the stage coach in Black Hawk all those years ago. She was so lost and scared. I wish I could go back and tell her that everything would work out better than she ever imagined. She found her way, and she found her voice." Cade smiled down at her. "Though I have to admit, I am glad Samuel Morton turned out to be the wrong man for you. Otherwise, I would never have had the chance to make you mine. We should not be glad about other people's failures. I am not glad he was a bad husband. I am just glad the universe corrected its mistake and brought you to me instead." Penelope laughed and kissed him. "The universe certainly works in mysterious ways." They stood together in the warm summer night, listening to the crickets and the gentle sounds of their ranch settling down for sleep. Inside the house, their children dreamed of their own futures. In the barn, the horses shifted in their stalls. Across the land they had built together, everything was peaceful and right. "Sing me one more song before we go to bed," Cade requested. "Something just for me." So Penelope sang softly in the darkness, her voice carrying only as far as her husband's ears. She sang a song of love fulfilled, of dreams come true, of a future bright with promise. And as she sang, Cade held her close, treasured her gift, and thanked whatever forces had brought them together. Years continued to pass, bringing both joys and challenges. Thomas grew into a fine young man and took over more of the ranch operations, eventually marrying a local girl and building his own house on the property. The twins pursued their own paths, Grace studying business in Denver while Sarah started a horse breeding program. Daniel's musical talent took him to study in San Francisco for a year, but he always returned home to the ranch and his family. Cade and Penelope grew older together, their hair turning gray and their faces gaining lines earned through years of laughter and hard work. But their love never dimmed. They still took evening walks together, still sat on the porch and watched the sunset, still found reasons to hold hands and steal kisses when they thought no one was looking. In 1905, when Penelope was 50 and Cade was 60, they became grandparents for the first time. Thomas and his wife had a son, and the arrival of baby Matthew brought a new dimension of joy to the Lawson family. Penelope sang lullabies to her grandson just as she had sung to her own children, passing down the gift of music to another generation. On their 25th wedding anniversary, the family gathered again for a celebration. This time it was a quieter affair, just immediate family and a few close friends. After dinner, Daniel played the piano while Penelope sang, and all her children joined in on the chorus. The sound of their voices blending together was one of the most beautiful things Cade had ever heard. Later that night, as they prepared for bed in the room they had shared for a quarter-century, Cade watched Penelope brush out her gray-streaked hair and marveled at how beautiful she still was to him. "What are you staring at?" she asked with a smile, catching his gaze in the mirror. "The most incredible woman I have ever known. I cannot believe it has been 25 years. Time flies when you are happy." She set down her brush and came to sit beside him on the bed. "Do you ever wonder what your life would have been like if you had never walked into the Silver Bell that night?" "No, because I cannot imagine any version of my life that does not include you. You are as essential to me as breathing." He took her hand and raised it to his lips. "Every good thing in my life stems from the moment I heard you sing. My children, my home, my sense of purpose, all of it traces back to you. I feel the same way about you. You saved me, Cade, not just from Samuel, but from a life of quiet desperation and loneliness. You showed me what it means to be truly loved and valued. We saved each other. He kissed her gently. And we will keep saving each other every day for as long as we both live. They made love that night with the tenderness and familiarity of two people who knew each other completely. Afterward, as they lay together in the darkness, Penelope hummed softly, and Cade listened with his eyes closed, a contented smile on his face. The ranch continued to thrive under the family's management. More grandchildren arrived, filling the property with the sound of children's laughter. The original house was expanded to accommodate the growing family, and additional homes were built for Thomas and eventually for the twins when they married and started their own families. The Songbird Ranch became not just a cattle operation but a true family legacy, a place where love and hard work created something lasting and valuable. In 1915, the nation was changing rapidly. Automobiles were becoming common, electricity was spreading to rural areas, and the world was embroiled in a terrible war overseas. But on the Songbird Ranch, some things remained constant. Cade and Penelope, now in their 60s, still walked together every evening, still held hands across the dinner table, still looked at each other with the same love and devotion they had felt all those years ago. One warm June evening, as they celebrated Cade's 70th birthday, surrounded by children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren, Penelope stood and announced she had a special gift for him. "Cade Lawson, you once told me that you wanted me to sing only for you. For 30 years, I have honored that request, saving my voice for you and our family. Tonight, I want to sing you a song I wrote myself, something that captures everything I feel for you." She began to sing, her voice perhaps not as powerful as it had been in her youth, but still clear and beautiful. The song spoke of a love that had endured through hardship and joy, of two souls finding each other against all odds, of building a life together one day at a time. When she finished, there was not a dry eye in the room, and Cade was openly weeping. He stood and pulled her into his arms, holding her as though she were the most precious thing in the world, which to him she was. "That was the most beautiful gift anyone has ever given me. Thank you, my love. Thank you for singing only for me. Always," she whispered. "From that first night in the Silver Bell until my last breath, my voice belongs to you." Cade lived to be 78 years old, passing peacefully in his sleep in 1923 with Penelope at his side. The entire community mourned the loss of a good man who had built something lasting and raised a family that would carry on his legacy. Penelope grieved deeply, but found comfort in their children and grandchildren, and in the memories of their years together. She lived another 10 years, spending her days helping with the ranch, playing with her great-grandchildren, and sometimes, on quiet evenings, singing softly to herself on the porch. She never performed publicly again after Cade died, keeping her promise that her voice was his alone. On a spring evening in 1933, Penelope sat in her rocking chair on the porch, watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant colors. Daniel sat beside her, his own hair now gray, playing softly on his guitar. "Will you sing with me, Mama?" he asked. "Like we used to." "I suppose I could manage one more song." She smiled at her son. "What should we sing? How about Lorna? The song you sang the night you met Papa." So mother and son sang together as the sun set over the Songbird Ranch. Penelope's voice was thin and wavering now, her 90 years evident in every note. But the beauty was still there, the gift that had brought her and Cade together all those decades ago. When the song ended, Penelope leaned back in her chair and closed her eyes. "That was lovely, Daniel. Thank you." "Are you all right, Mama?" "I am perfect, my dear boy. I was just thinking about your father, about the first time I sang that song and saw him watching me with such wonder. I knew even then that he was special, that he saw something in me no one else had ever seen. He loved you until his last breath. And I loved him, still do." She opened her eyes and looked at her son. "You know what the greatest gift your father gave me was. It was not the ranch or the security or even the children, though I treasure all of those things. The greatest gift was that he made me feel worthy of love. After everything I had been through, all the shame and failure, he looked at me and saw someone worth fighting for. That changed everything. You gave him the same gift, Mama. He told me once that hearing you sing made him want to be a better man, someone who deserved to have such beauty in his life." Penelope smiled. "We saved each other, your father and I. That is what real love does. It sees you at your worst and loves you anyway. It gives you strength when you have none of your own. It builds something lasting from even the most difficult circumstances." That night, Penelope passed away peacefully in her sleep, joining Cade in whatever came after this life. The family laid her to rest beside him on a hill overlooking the ranch they had built together. Her headstone bore a simple inscription: Penelope Jensen Lawson, beloved wife, mother, and grandmother. Her voice silenced saloons and sang love into existence. The Songbird Ranch continued for generations, each one carrying forward the legacy of love and determination that Cade and Penelope had established. Their story became family legend, told to children and grandchildren as an example of what true love looks like, of how courage and faith can transform even the most difficult circumstances into something beautiful and lasting. And sometimes, on quiet evenings when the wind blows just right across the Colorado plains, people swear they can hear a woman's voice singing on the breeze, clear and beautiful and full of love, as though Penelope's gift continues to echo through the land she called home, singing for all eternity to the cowboy who loved her enough to say, "Sing only for me."